Hi, Elaine here. After the most recent presidential election, I was feeling disheartened with politics at a national level. In an attempt to keep sane, I began looking for people who were not elected into office to talk about how they are working to build and safekeep our communities. I wanted to talk about politics from the people. Now, with We Have Action, an indivisible group based in Arlington, Virginia, I'm bringing those conversations to you. This week, I'm speaking with Julie Bolthouse, Director of Land Use at Piedmont Environmental Council. This is From the People. Julie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to just start with your background. How did you get into the work that you're doing now?
I've been in this position that I'm in with Piedmont Environmental Council for 16 years. So I've been here for a while, but prior to that, I started out in fisheries science. That's what my bachelor's degree was in. I worked for Game and Inland Fisheries for a little over a year, maybe about 2 years, down in Southwest Virginia. And then I went on to get my master's degree in urban affairs and planning and natural resources. I moved back up to Northern Virginia with my husband and pursued those masters while working various jobs, regular, type of 7-Eleven, that sort of stuff, while trying to get a master's degree to go on to something else. I then took a couple positions with first the city of Alexandria, working on safe routes to school planning, which was a lot of fun. I was in GIS, was helping to set up their mapping and safety for safe routes to school, and was studying while getting my degree the possibility of extending safe routes to school to high schools, so beyond just middle school and elementary school. So it was a lot of fun, and got to know a lot of people in the community, a lot of teachers, and a lot of folks who advocate for pedestrian connectivity and getting our kids, to have more autonomy and be able to be out and about in the community more. So anyways, then I went on to working with the Regional Commission, Rappahannock Regional Commission over in Culpeper, Virginia, and worked on everything from sustainable planning workshops, green infrastructure workshops, to emergency planning of like our evacuation corridors and transportation plans for the aging community and all sorts of different projects that they had grants for. So that's my background before I came to PEC, but then an opportunity opened up with PEC, and it really was a place that I fell in love with. The second I started working there, I was like, this is such a broad organization that covers so many different issues, which fits very much with my personality. I like to work on large, swath of different things and look at things holistically. And PEC gave me the opportunity to do that. And so I've been here ever since.
So it sounds like you were doing a lot of different things. Was there like a common theme among them that attracted you to the things you were doing?
Well, I've always loved the outdoors. And so, truthfully, I've also always wanted to work towards the social good. And so, like, a little too much information, but when I was in high school and I went to college, I kind of had a mindset that I wanted to go into like Starfleet, kind of thing. I was a big Trekkie. I'm a big nerd. And, I went into engineering initially, and I was going to go into aerospace engineering, and I really wanted to work for NASA at one point. And I realized pretty quickly that engineering was not really the field for me because I'm such a collaborative person, and I am very much, again, geared towards the social good. And it was such a competitive field. The second I walked in, a professor was like, look to your left and look to your right. Those people will be gone, or it might be you. It was just like, this is not the atmosphere I really want to go to school in. And so I was visiting other colleges at Virginia Tech, and I fell in love with the College of Natural Resources, which was much more collaborative and was a great opportunity to really fix things that were broken that I never had realized were broken before. So first thing I learned when I I watched a presentation from a professor there, and they were talking about the overharvesting of fisheries in our oceans. Ocean trawling was what the presentation was about. And it was something I had never thought about. It just never even occurred to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is something that really needs someone to dig in and fix it. And that's my personality. That's what I've always wanted to do, is dig in and fix things. And so that's why I went into fisheries initially. And then when I was working for Game and Inland Fisheries Department, I, created a number of things. Like I created the bog turtle database that, I think is still used to this day probably to, track the population of the bog turtles, which is an endangered species in Southwest Virginia. And so as I was doing that, though, I realized I wanted to go a step further. I wanted to do more than just create databases or track the loss of species, truthfully. And so that's why I decided I wanted to go back to school, because I realized that in fisheries, at least from what I was able to get into, I was not able to make the change that I wanted to make in the world. And so I was like, I want to shape what happens on the ground, because so much of what happens in the larger watershed is what influences what happens inside the ecology of our freshwater systems. And so I went back to school to get a degree in urban affairs and planning, because I felt like that was where I could actually make a difference to protect the species that I was so concerned about, that I was trying to protect working for Game and Inland Fisheries. And then I also got my master's degree in natural resources management, because I still wanted to dig in more into ecological sustainability. I took some courses on sustainable economics and learned a lot from Professor, I think it was Brian Check, I think he's still there actually, about sustainable economies and how you can have a steady state economy, which was a concept that I really liked. I learned a lot from it. So
Sounds like your interests really lay in this intersection between societal management and the natural world.
yes, I was trying to find my niche. I've always been the type of person who I wanted to find where is the gap that no one else is really addressing. And truthfully, that's what brought me into a lot of different issues that I worked on. One of them was actually historic bridge preservation. In Fauquier County, I learned about Waterloo Bridge, which was the oldest metal truss in the state. And I realized that the protections around these bridges was really not there. And a lot of them were being lost very quickly over time. And this is a very unique and important resource in our communities, a cultural resource, something that people really connected with. And it was a huge loss for sense of place, and also just a huge loss for history as well, to be taking down these bridges. So anyways, those are the kind of spaces that I like to dig into. And data centers was another one of those spaces. As I learned more about them, I realized that there was just this dearth of information, and that nobody was really digging into this space. And it was such a huge space that needed attention, because it was explosively growing and eating up a number of our different resources.
I do want to dig into the data center thing, but before we do that, can you just tell me about kind of the last 16 years at the PEC?
16 years summed up into 5 minutes. So obviously I mentioned the Waterloo Bridge fight. That was actually a good number of my years right there, because I was gathering all the information about historic bridges in the state, and started to put forward that information to VDOT. But before that, I also worked on a number of different projects that were geared towards kind of two areas, both proactive kind of approach to conservation and sustainability and good planning, and then a reactive, approach, because sometimes the thing comes at you and you don't have to react to it. You can't proactively address it because you didn't know it was coming. So the proactive stuff that I engaged in was like our sustainable landscaping workshops, and working with the community on connectivity with a number of my colleagues. I learned so much from folks that have been at PEC for a long time, and those who have left PEC, trying to better our communities through robust connection plans and robust zoning that incorporates concepts like sustainable landscaping, use of native plants, dark sky protections, those sort of aspects. But on the other hand, I also have been involved in a number of reactive response kind of battles, which was like we've had huge transportation projects through our community, like the Bi-County Connector, which is a road project that still is truthfully moving forward in different portions of transportation plans in Loudoun County and otherwise. But, this is the Outer Beltway concept, which was first, I believe, floated in the 80s, late 80s, and has kind of kept coming back up over and over and over again. And truthfully, it leads to sprawl, and it's not cost effective. It's not good planning to be building these massive road projects when what we should be focused on is more of what I call a strong towns approach. If you've ever heard of the movement strong towns, it's an incremental approach to enhancing communities, and you go in and you look at where is the investments that you can make that are lower dollar investments but bring a lot of bang for their buck. And so you go into roads and you look at where can we enhance connectivity, where can we make this a safer design, and where can we connect people more to the sense of place that they've lost, and try to fill in the areas that we've kind of allowed to sprawl and
Yeah.
become underinvested in.
I imagine that in a lot of your work, your work has been portrayed as being anti-progress, but it doesn't sound at all like that you are anti-progress. If that's the case, can you kind of speak to that framing?
Yeah, I would say that it's all in the eye of the beholder what is progress. And I think that's the challenge, is that the things that I see as progress may not be the things that other people might see as progress. And so when I'm advocating for investment in small improvements of sidewalk connections and bike trails and, recreational connectivity to our streams and our rivers and our forests, and allowing people to enjoy kind of a biophilic community, which means like, trees in your community and incorporating nature into your community. I see that as progress. I don't see that as stagnating progress. I think you can still have a growing built environment and still invest in those things and not have the mega huge transportation project or the mega transmission line project. And you can do things like rooftop solar instead, distributed energy solutions. And so I think it all depends on what you see as progress. And I think too often our society just measures progress on like GDP, gross
Yeah.
domestic product. And it's like, well, there's a whole lot more to what creates a enjoyable community than just, the GDP. It's also, what is the quality of life? Have you made it more enjoyable? Are people happier? Are we actually providing more equity in our community? Or is everybody being lifted up, or is just a few very big companies being lifted up? So I think it all depends on what you define progress as. And I think progress is a big boat, and everybody needs to come on it, not just a few people.
Yeah. So that is a good segue, I think, to the conversation of data centers, which is a fight that you have started. Can you talk a little bit about your work there?
Yeah, so we've been engaged in this battle, I guess we can call it, for the last 5 years. And it started out, I mean, truthfully, our first data center project was in 2017, and it was True North. It was a data center proposal on the Goose Creek in Loudoun County, outside of what had typically been designated as Data Center Alley, in that area where data center growth typically had taken place to that point. And it had huge impacts on the environment because it was on a scenic designated river body, Goose Creek. It was also on a globally rare ecosystem or endangered ecosystem called the Piedmont Mafic Barren. And it was really just not in the right place as well. It was in the transition zone. It was not really an area where we wanted to see this kind of growth. And so we pushed back on that project, and unfortunately we lost. It was still approved and is built and causing some impact to residents today. But that was just our first foray into this space. And at that time, we did not realize how big the issue was going to become. It was just the first hyperscale data center outside of Data Center Alley. Then after that, we ran into Digital Gateway, which was a massive project in Prince William County next to the Manassas National Battlefield Park. It was 22 million square feet of data center space. That's the equivalent of like 100 plus Walmart supercenters. So I mean, this is a lot of data center space. It was at the time that it was proposed, it was going to be about, I think, 2/3 the size of all of Data Center Alley. Like that, and Data Center Alley is huge in Loudoun
Yeah.
County. It's the largest data center market in the world. And it was proposed right next to the Manassas National Battlefield on a little road, very rural road called Pageland Lane. We opposed that project, but we also, going beyond that opposition, we started to realize how big this issue was. And that's when we started to form the Virginia, towards the end of that fight, we started to form the Virginia Data Center Reform Coalition. Because as we were gathering information about energy usage from the site and potential water usage, and the air quality implications of all these generators that were going to be on the site, all the backup generators that were diesel, we were putting out information. And as we were putting out this information, other groups from around the state started to ask us questions because they're like, you seem to understand what a data center is and what these impacts are. Can you help us in our community? Many of these communities were outside of our 9-county region because we only cover Loudoun County down to Albemarle County. And so we decided that we couldn't be just, we don't have the capacity to be going out into all these other communities and being the
Right.
leader in their grassroots movement. We just didn't have that capacity. And we realized that what we needed to do was create a Virginia, coalition around this issue so that we could all help each other and we could share resources and be stronger together doing that. So we worked with MPCA, Kyle Hart from National Parks Conservation Association, and Elena Schlossberg from the Coalition to Protect Prince William to pull together a coalition that would cover the entire state. The coalition was initially formed it was a listserv where everybody was just kind of communicating on this listserv, and we met periodically through virtual meetings. But soon it became much bigger than that. It became like a training hub. We put all this information, mapping information. We were all gathering permits, the air permits for the generators. We started gathering all the projects that were happening throughout the state, and we put them onto a map so that everybody could kind of see how much development was being proposed across the state, because no other agency was tracking this. No other agency was looking at this explosive growth of data center development. And so we started actually adding it up and started highlighting for our elected officials just how much was in the pipeline, that we were talking about hundreds of millions of square feet being approved. We started putting together all the air permits and emphasizing, hey guys, we're over 10,000 diesel generators at this point. We've got a serious issue here. This is a real threat to our air quality. We started putting together the information about the energy infrastructure that was going to be necessary to feed all of the energy demand. We started pulling together all the transmission line data, and we worked with a ton of volunteers to do all this. So it wasn't just all PEC staff. This was all the other groups that were engaged in the coalition. At this point, I can't even remember how many it started out with. I think it was like 30 groups, but at this point, we're now over 60 groups that are a part of this coalition. And so we've got, full-time staff that are, helping us to pull together information from other groups. And of course, we've got our full-time staff within PEC, but we've also got a number of volunteers that are out there just doing air quality monitoring, or they're out there giving presentations, they're writing op-eds, they're putting together fact sheets and things like that for their community. They're making yard signs for their community. And that's all grassroots movement. That's them doing these things on their own and maybe sharing, resources or how they did it with other folks who are looking to do the same. But there's just so many different communities that are impacted at this point that it's become a really important connection piece for the larger Virginia movement. And then we realized too that we needed, after the first year was kind of chaos. It was just us talking to each other. But after like the first year, we realized we needed a platform, and we pulled together the 4 pillars of data center reform. And that's where we really started to frame up what it is we wanted in terms of reform. And that was oversight at the state level. This can't just be approved by localities, because the localities are not looking at the big picture. They're not looking at the impact to the energy infrastructure, to our climate, to the regional air quality, to the regional water supplies, and to the cost to the ratepayers of building all this infrastructure. They're not looking at the cost to our electric bills. So we needed state oversight. We needed transparency. We realized it was hard for us to get this information, and a lot of it we couldn't get at all. And we realized we needed more transparency around energy. How much power are they using, and what does it actually necessitate? We needed more information about water. How much water were they using when they were operating? How much water were they going to need when they were proposing these projects? More transparency in just the projects coming forward in general. They were using NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, to put a lot of these projects forward and share no information or very limited information with the community. And then we also realized we needed more information about emissions, because we had all these air permits out there and nobody was calculating like what is the cumulative impact of all of this. Each one is being approved as a minor permit, but no one was adding them up to see what was going to be the holistic impact on the regional air quality. And then third, we needed ratepayer protection, because the cost of all this infrastructure, I mean, we're at this point, we are at 51 gigawatts of contracted capacity in Dominion Energy territory. And just for context, what is 51 gigawatts? That's twice the size of the existing grid. The entire Dominion Energy's existing grid, that's twice the size of it. It's also just one gigawatt is a nuclear reactor. It's a gas plant. So like a gigawatt is a lot. So when you say 51 gigawatts of contracted capacity for data center development, what we're talking about is dozens of gas plants. We're talking about dozens of nuclear reactors. We're talking about thousands of miles of transmission lines. We're talking about hundreds of substations. And so that infrastructure, not only does it have a massive footprint on our communities and on our natural resources, it also costs a lot. And right now, the way that all those costs are allocated is it's a shared infrastructure cost for all ratepayers. We all pay for new generation that's added to the grid. We all pay for new transmission lines that are added to the grid. And when you're talking about adding this much to the grid, that's going to be a huge jump in our electric bills. And so we need to protect the ratepayers. That was the third pillar. We need to protect ratepayers, and the industry needs to pay for their own infrastructure. And then the fourth pillar is mitigation. And that's mitigation on all fronts. This is mitigation of the impacts of these transmission lines. It's, the sales tax exemption. Why are we handing out almost $2 billion at this point to the richest companies in the world to locate here when they would already locate here, because we have the largest data center market with the most robust fiber network on the planet. It's the most interconnected market on the planet. Why would we need to incentivize them to come here? So there's a lot of things that could fall into that bucket of mitigation, but that's our fourth pillar. And then we went to lobby days advocating for those. We organized lobby days and brought folks down to them to advocate on those 4 pillars. And we've been doing that for the past 4 years.
Sounds like you've been in this kind of data center fight for almost 10 years. Have you found that in the last couple of years that more people are gaining awareness of the issue?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's exploded. This past year, knowledge around this issue has just exploded. So the first year we went down to Richmond, which was 2023, I believe. That was the first year we went down and lobbied in Richmond. Legislators had most of the legislators we talked to had no idea what a data center was. So we were just explaining what is a data center? Why are we concerned about the data center? They were only seeing these as potentially bringing in revenue for the community. So we had to share with them, okay, yes, they do generate revenue if taxed appropriately, but there are all these other impacts that you need to consider. And so we need to be getting a handle on this before it gets out of control. So I think the knowledge around data centers in the last couple years has exploded really because people are actually seeing the impacts. Now they're starting to realize, like, we don't need to explain to them what the impact is of transmission lines that are going to need to serve this load, because they're actually being proposed now. And people are getting the notices from the utility saying, hey, we're looking at your property for a future right of way of a big giant 765 kV transmission line or a 500 kV through your HOA open space. So they're feeling the impacts. They're actually hearing the gas turbines running at, one of these data centers in Sterling, Virginia is running off of gas turbines. And that is a very obnoxious noise to be living next to. And there's concern that we're going to see more of those because we have a few more proposals moving through the pipeline for those. And they're feeling the air quality implications of this. They're starting to actually see the smoke above some of these data centers as they cut on their diesel generators because the grid is getting more stressed and we're seeing more, outage events and them having to cut on. We're actually feeling the constraints on the water supply at this point. You've got a report from American Rivers that the Potomac River is the most threatened river in America due to unconstrained data center growth right now. And that's coming from studies that were done by the what is it called? The Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin. And that's a very reputable organization that is pulling together data and looking at long term, what does the continued growth of data centers mean for our water supply going forward of our nation's capital? Because that's what the Potomac feeds. It feeds not just Northern Virginia, but DC as
Right.
well. And that's who's downstream that's impacted when the water is evaporated out into the sky and lost from the system when we're doing cooling of data centers. And there's a lot of concern about the upstream water usage as well, because it's not just the water used for cooling of the data centers, because not all data centers cool with water. Some of them are air cooled, some of them have closed loop systems, which reduce the water usage. Some of them even use liquid cooling, like glycol based liquid cooling, which can significantly reduce or eliminate water usage. But you also have the water usage for all those gas plants in the nuclear facilities, and they use even more than the data centers do to keep that energy supply flowing to them. And so there's concerns about where's that water going to come from. So across the board, I think people are starting to see that the resources of our community are being eaten up by the explosive growth of this industry. And it's not just they're worried about what's coming in the future. They're actually seeing what's happening right now in front of their own very eyes. So yes, I think people have really started to pick up on this issue, and I think it's changed drastically. And I think the tone of the conversation has changed drastically. And if you look at the polling data, at this point, it's over 60% of people feel like data centers are. I'm trying to remember exactly what the poll said in the Washington Post. I think was like 60% of people didn't want to see a data center built near them. But there's just growing concern. Even the Washington Post today, I don't know if you saw the comic. There was a comic in the Washington Post today. It has it's really funny.
Yes,
It
the
has a
dinosaurs.
dinosaur eating an AI data center. It's like usually they're not cheering for us. What's going on? Why are they cheering for us destroying this building? There's a little part in the corner that says it's almost the size of Manhattan, which is a reference back to I think it was Meta put out an image of their data center being as big as Manhattan as a bragging point, I guess. So.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but the rise in data center awareness has seemed to coincide with the rise in AI. And I was wondering how you feel about the conversation surrounding AI.
So I think AI is an umbrella term. And it covers a lot of different things that we do. So there's machine learning, there's large language models, there's a lot of different things that AI kind of covers. I think that I'm trying to think of how to word this. The industry itself, and the industry is also very broad, and there's a lot of different players in the industry. There's the construction workers, there's the folks who are, building the secondary things that go into the data center, like the generators and the cooling equipment and the electric, like Snyder Electric and, Hit Construction, the general contractor. There's all these different players in the data center space. And then you have big tech, and that's like AWS, Google, the ones we really think about. And then, of course, you have the people at the top that everyone really thinks about, which is like Elon Musk and Sam Altman and, Peter Thiel and, those people. And they have a sort of storyline around them, each one of them, and that's in the media. And I think society is kind of putting that all together into one category of just AI. And it really is much more complex than that. And so the people who are just building these facilities are building what the market is calling for, and the people at the very, very, very top who are touting the need for AI are putting out narratives that are honestly almost to the realm of sci-fi. And they're putting out these narratives of like AI is going to take all of our jobs, or the singularity is coming, and AGI is, we can't even release this model because it's so dangerous. And it is scaring people to the point where there's almost an irrational backlash against AI because they believe what they're hearing, that it's going to take everyone's job, that it could potentially completely destroy us, that it's I don't know, all these different things that it's going to do. I don't really, personally, this is not Piedmont Environmental Council talking, this is Julie Bolthouse talking. I don't personally think that any of that stuff is actually realistic. I think it is a narrative that is being put out there to make their products sound more amazing than they truly are. They are very cool, and they will. I do think that the AI will absolutely continue to be used. Large language models will absolutely continue to be used. They'll be integrated into a lot of things, and I think that we'll see the success of some of that. I don't think it's going to be as big as they have made it out to be. And so there's a backlash that they've actually created themselves, by putting out this narrative, by getting people so scared about it. And the reason they're doing it is to try to get the market so excited about it. But right. The backlash is that the people are like, well, if you're right and it really is going to replace all of our jobs, what's going to happen to me? And so I think that it's a very complex situation that they have kind of created around themselves. What I want the public to understand is that this isn't as out of control as it feels, that we have the existing framework to address these issues. We're just not using it. We have the ability to ensure that the industry pays for all of their power infrastructure. It's a very complicated process, and it takes time, and we need to do it correctly. And we need to integrate the cost of their transmission lines into the transmission case, and the generation case will have its own place where we have to actually make them pay for their generation. We have to make them pay for all these different aspects. There is frameworks for regulation that can control the impacts on water and require transparency on water usage, on energy usage, on use of NDAs. Like, we can set up all of these regulations and we can put all these things in place. We can ensure that they're paying fair share in taxes. We can ensure that they are taking care of communities when they come in through community benefit agreements that have to be in addition to the basics of paying for their own infrastructure and being transparent about their energy and water usage and actually protecting those resources. But there's a lot of different things that we can do. The problem is that we're not doing them because we're stuck in this mindset of anything that we do might slow down the growth, and the growth has to keep growing as fast as possible. There's a push from the industry, scale and speed to market. Those are the two things that matter most. And they want to move as fast as they can and as big as they can. And as long as our elected officials continue to let them do that, instead of taking control of this issue and saying, okay, nope, 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 we're going to regulate and protect the environment, protect communities, ensure you're paying for your infrastructure. And also, we're also going to regulate AI for social reasons. We're going to make sure that the development of AI is done in a way that protects, creators' content, that protects communities, that protects mental health. And we're doing this in a way that works for everyone. We could be in a much better place. And it doesn't mean you don't use AI. It doesn't mean AI is evil. It just means that we do this in a more controlled and reasonably paced way than we're doing it right now. We can't just continue to let the industry run the show. Like, we actually have to step in as a government and protect the public. And honestly, I would argue that if the industry wants to stop this backlash and wants to stop the cartoons about dinosaurs eating their data centers and everybody cheering, then they should jump on board with regulation, and they should jump on board with paying their fair share. And truthfully, they should slow down. They should realize that we've got 51 gigawatts of contracted capacity here in Virginia. That's going to take decades to build out. There is no reason to continue to try to build data centers or to get data centers approved in Virginia when you have a pipeline that will go out for decades, most likely.
If people want to join your fight or help, how do they go about doing that, or learning even more information about PEC?
So our organization covers a whole lot of issues, and I would definitely encourage them to join our list for the 9-county region that we cover. We covered Loudoun County down to Albemarle County. So if you're in any of the counties in between, we have all sorts of conservation events. We actually own land. We have hiking trails. Up near Sky Meadows, we have the Piedmont Memorial Overlook. We also have a trail over by our farm at the Roundabout Meadows in Aldi area. So we've got a lot of people on the ground that they can connect with. Our staff works regionally in those 9 counties. So join our list. You can go on to www.pecva.org and connect with us there and find out more about our work, and hopefully come out and enjoy some of the conservation efforts that we've made, and join some of our land use fights as well.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts to get our upcoming releases. If you would like to join We of Action, you can go to their website at www.wofava.org or follow them on their various social media links, which are also included in the show notes. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Elaine from Related. See you next time.